Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joshua Harover, and I'm a communications major here at the University of West Florida. And this is my video submission for creative writing, fiction writing, for the From Accuracy to Zigzag assignment. So our instructions were to choose a particular word from the From Accuracy to Zigzag alphabet in the book Making Shapely Fiction by Jerome Stern. The word that I chose for this assignment is bathos, B-A-T-H-O-S. Now, bathos is a negative term used in creative writing / the creative writing industry to describe a piece of fiction that is designed or was designed by the author or authors to be very sad, emotional, tragic, etc. But when the author puts together the events that are supposed to be the tragedy for the story, they execute it very poorly. And they don't build up to the events. They have all the events collide together into one very quick, very sudden, massive apocalypse, and it results in very poor quality writing. To help better illustrate this, Mr. Stern gives us a great example. I'm actually going to quote it here for this video. And I quote from Making Shapely Fiction in his entry on page 91. Soap opera has that effect when you read a synopsis of all the complexities that beset people in a single episode. And this is the quote he uses to help illustrate the problem of bathos, that writers have tried so hard to make you cry that you feel like you're in a soap opera. Quote, Robert is suffering from a hereditary liver disease. His wife Amelia has been arrested for cocaine smuggling. Their amnesiac son has disappeared yet again, and their house has mysteriously burned to the ground. Robert learns that his business enemies are planning on kidnapping his mistress Margot, and as he drives to stop them, Robert runs over his beloved cat. As you can see, very cliche, very stereotypical. And as a matter of fact, incidentally, one of the words that he says to look up in addition to bathos is cliche, because he says they're related. But you can see by that example that those are things that all sound very dangerous, very tragic, very terrible. But when you see them executed on television or executed in literature in that way, they just sound very stereotypical, very predictable, very unconvincing, unrealistic, and they are very poor, lazy writing. And they seem, to be honest, like garbage. This is an example of what happens with us if we don't space out our writing enough, if we don't build up to the events in our story and provide a good pace that gives our readers time to breathe and gives them a tragedy, does something that's supposed to make them have an emotional connection to the story, but does it without going over the top and being excessive. This is what happens if we go over the top and become excessive in our attempt to tap into the emotions of our readers, specifically the emotion of sadness, misery, pain, emotions associated with pain, etc. So, an example I can use from our writing in the class, from my writing, is that for the beginnings, middles, and ends assignment, I made a story where the main character had amnesia. And you all remember that assignment. We started the beginning of our own stories. Then our job was to continue someone else's story, and someone else continued our stories. And eventually what would happen is, as we all did this, there would be a beginning, a middle from someone else, and then we would go back and create an end, and everything was labeled as part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and they all had to be a minimum of 500 words or minimum of 750 words. Either way, it ended up being a finished story, and we all collaborated on those stories. In my story, the main character had amnesia. Eventually, a fellow student introduced a character called Valentine. Valentine was a robot that was in the story, which is set in the 1800s, and at first I would have been at risk for bathos. I almost had bathos in the writing, and I almost basically violated one of Mr. Stern's rules of thumb and types of advice. I violated it in that I more or less was almost going to that cliche route. I almost made my story too dystopian. I almost made my story seem like it was just another stereotype of someone with amnesia experiencing events. But thanks to the other student, the inclusion of this robot Valentine was able to be used as a tool. We were able to use it as a tool to explain how the character came to have amnesia in the first place, and to explain why the character is so important to the story. And we did it in such a way that the events were spaced out enough that the reader has time to process the information, and it comes across as at least semi-convincing or semi-thought through fully, semi-fully formed as far as ideas go. And so that's an example of recent writings for Bathos that I think I just narrowly escaped with the help of one of my classmates. And I'm going to actually give a quick writing prompt about Bathos. What I would like you guys to do is to have a writing prompt where you write a story about a time when you or someone that you remember was bullied when you were in school. And it doesn't have to be long. Just try to get it up to 500 words, 500 or 600 words if you can. And I want you to lie in it on purpose. Not to slander anybody, but I want you to try to create your own example of Bathos. So remember that soap opera example from Making Shapely Fiction, and go over the top on it. Be dramatic on purpose. Make it sound like it's supposed to be a tragedy, but make it sound like it's a very cliche tragedy from an episode of Young and the Restless that your grandmother is watching on ABC. Do this on purpose so that when the story is finished, you will have an example of Bathos that you can keep with you as a visual reminder of something to avoid. You can put it on the wall, or you can take a safety pin and stick it somewhere, stick it on the fridge with a magnet, but you'll always have it there like a post-it note for creative writing. It will be staring at you in the face, and it will let you know if you see anything like this in any of your future stories, you need to make changes. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.